to the Dwarven Tavern. I am your host, Lyric, and today we are tackling another beginner's video, and this time it is going to be about, mostly for the DM actually this time, and that is how can you deal with a beginner who has too high a character level. And that means like a character has leveled up way too fast, and the player not only doesn't have a character or personality set out for it, but also doesn't know how to handle that much power, I guess. They have too much responsibility for that character, and suddenly they're overwhelmed with all the possibilities, and half of their abilities just, escape them most of the time. So, how can a DM deal with that? Well, first off, let's talk about how these scenarios come about. And that is, hi Scarlet, that is, your character may have leveled up too quickly because there have been encounters back to back, and the DM is just, wants to make it a fun, exciting campaign, and they want to keep the player in mind with how much they are interested in it, so they just set them out against monsters galore and have earned too much experience points. Which unfortunately there is such a thing, and they just don't know how to use them all. Another scenario is that they really want to indulge the character. They want to indulge the person who is extremely new to Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder or pretty much any other role-playing game based on experience points. They want to indulge them and make them extremely interested in it by using the positive reinforcement mentality, and that they just keep giving them experience points for even minor details. Which happens a lot, unfortunately. It's actually really common for this type of stuff to happen. I have actually had this type of thing happen to me. And it also happens to extremely new dungeon masters. And this personal experience. I was extremely new at dungeon mastering, and when I was getting Taverner Josh into gaming for the first time, because I introduced gaming to him, I wanted him to really see the beneficial attributes to gaming and how fun it was and how rewarding it was. And unfortunately, being a new dungeon master, I kind of buttered it on, and in doing so, it gave him this super high-powered character who had no idea how to use half of his abilities. So it can happen, and mostly happens out of the goodwill of the Dungeon Master's heart, and now the Dungeon Master is stuck with this really high-level beginner, and they just don't know what to do with it anymore. So, now that we know how it happens, first we'll talk about what you can do for your character after this has happened, and then we'll talk about how you can avoid it in the future. So, firstly, you have this extremely high-level beginner. This character that they rolled up 2 sessions ago, they rolled up like last Friday, and they are already like 3rd level, and they have no personality to their character. They have all this weapon crap that they found from their dungeon crawl, they have all this gold. What do they do now? They want to go continue fighting for the glory that is Paylor, or they want to continue picking pockets for the glory that is themselves. And they want to just keep going with the action and don't actually want to have any story based to their campaign. Or, it might even be they want to continue on, but they're also interested in the story aspect of the game. There's so many ways that this avenue can go. But let's talk about what you can do for character no matter what they themselves want for their player. Or rather, what the player wants for their character. I said that reversed. So, what can you do as a dungeon master, or game master, depending on what game you're playing, for your character, for your player, I did it again, who wants to do more for their character or not? So, there are 3 different aspects just off the top of my head that you can do, that we'll get into, and they will be as helpful as I can make them. There are obviously more avenues that you can take. There are the different ways that you can help your character, help your player learn to expand on their character rather than their experience points. But we'll just talk about those 3. Well, this is kind of an extreme case, and I really don't recommend it except for higher level characters, especially the ones that know how to deal with certain scenarios like this, because this seems like a little like you're picking on your player, especially if they're new. And that would be to face them off against an adversary that would take away experience points, and that would take away levels. Things like a vampire, if depending on what type of game you're playing, or even something as severe as an atropal. Like I said, this is extreme cases and probably should be avoided at all costs for beginners. But if your character is leveled up way too quickly and you don't know how else to deal with it, then this is the, worst case scenario, extreme case that you just have no other option, and that's it. That's all you can do is just face them off against an atropal, and then an atropal just glides by in the atmosphere and absorbs 10 levels of your new beginner, and that's that. And they've never actually faced the atropal, but they lose that experience points that they don't know what to do with. Now, again, that is the extreme case, and I would never truly, honestly recommend that. But that is an option that you could take if you feel like you're trapped and you have no other option. That would make a new beginner, I feel, not want to play the game. So that's, like I said, worst case scenario, and we'll just scoot that over to the side. So probably don't even think about that. Just let it drift from your mind. The second thing that you could do, or actually the first thing that I would recommend, is to take that player and make their character go into a scenario where it's based on story instead of action. Now, what I mean by that is that characters often get experience points and level up quicker when it's action-based, encounter-based types of games. When they're fighting all the time, it's extremely easy for their character to gain experience points, especially if they're in like something like a dungeon crawl or a grave robber campaign. They are going to be fighting these monsters and looting these treasures and, doing all of this stuff that requires a lot of physical challenges, and physical challenge gives you more experience points than building a personality. Unfortunately, while that does build their physical experience, that doesn't give them the personality that they need. And they might be the dungeon crawler that never has anything more than a superficial personality, and that's fine too. But more often than not, beginners aren't making that type of character purposefully. It's merely inexperience, and more often than not, the character is not actually, made that way purposefully. The player just doesn't know how else to game. So, my second recommendation, and the one that I highly recommend, is to take that character and place them in a story-based scenario instead of an action-based scenario. And what I mean by that is you pluck them from the dungeon crawl and you insert them into the middle of the city. Or you can also take them, if you want a little more, leeway from one situation to another, is you make them face an adversary in the dungeon that takes them by surprise, or you make them lose a battle, you're super hardcore against them, and then they are prisoners of war, or are involved with the slave trade now, and they have to figure their way out as non-violently as possible, because any sort of violence would get them killed. Now, characters who don't learn from that experience will probably, lose their character, and that's not your fault necessarily. They have to, really think about where their character is, and they have to place themselves in their character's shoes and realize, oh my god, this is a life and death situation. This is worse battle than fighting those kobolds in the middle of the dungeon. This is, orcs are now trying to sell me to this other orc tribe so that I'm a, slave maiden who pleasures them in ways that I'm not comfortable with, like cooking. So your character has to figure out a way to escape without alerting the guards, without alerting the people who are selling and buying her or him. And also how to make it safely out using their skills and their bonuses that aren't violent. They have to work on their diplomacy skills. They have to work on their gather information skills. They have to work on their move silently skills. And those are just off the top of my head. That would also help build their personality more than their fighting abilities. That being said, they still gain experience points from their personality being built. However, it's a way more slow transgression. And I guess I should say way slower transition for them to gain experience points for their personality rather than their action. Because some DMs don't even give experience points for roleplay, which, if you're a DM, please listen to me and give your characters experience points for roleplaying. That's a very, very highly attuned skill that a lot of people don't know how to do. So if they do it well, give them experience points for it. So that's my second recommendation, is make them use their wit rather than their sword. Put them in a situation where they are uncomfortable and they have to talk themselves out of the scenario. That's actually the best way to learn anything, is to put yourself out of your comfort zone. Really put yourself on the spot. And your characters might not appreciate it at first. Your players might be a little angry or uncomfortable, or they might be a little turned off of playing for a little while, but once they get used to it, then they get used to it. And I am only speaking about that from personal experience. I was very uncomfortable with role-playing at first, and I had a mild panic attack in the middle of gaming because my character had no idea what to do. And then I learned from that, and I became a really great role-player, from what I've been told. The last thing that I would recommend is to simply take the high-level beginner's character and put them aside for now. Shelf them, bench them for now. Make sure that they're, nice and neat and safe. They will be gotten to eventually, and roll up a completely new character and do the whole process over again at a much slower rate. And the reason I recommend this is because if they want to keep that character, hello Artemis, if they want to keep that character, which I would recommend they do, then they can always go back to it without having to lose any sort of ability or anything, any sort of experience points. They wouldn't have to lose anything, and they can also gain a new character who has a whole different story, and they learn at a much slower rate, or rather, they learn at a much quicker rate, why their character was treated the way that they were, and why their character leveled up as fast as they did, but also learn why that was not necessarily the best thing. They might not be happy about it, about any of this. They might actually be put off from the game entirely, but in all honesty, that would happen either way in this scenario. If they level up too quickly and their character has no personality, and it's all about the hack and slash and the killing and the dungeon crawling and all of that stuff, then it would seem like a very uninteresting, very mundane campaign, and they would lose interest in it anyway. So I would recommend this in order to avoid that and explain, of course, why you're doing it. My number 2 rule is to communicate. Always talk to your player, always talk to your DM, always explain why things are happening so that everybody has a full understanding of what's going on. Everybody's on the same page, and no one feels left out or forgotten or confused by the entire situation. If a character feels that you're being mean to them for no reason, then sit down and talk with them, saying, why do you feel this way? Explain certain aspects of the game, that the DM is not there to pick on you. The DM is there to put a world around you that would evolve and work with the player or not. And teach the player that you are not there, you are not the opposing force necessarily, but the force that would be there regardless. The next thing that I wanted to discuss was how to avoid, in the future, leveling your players' characters up way too quickly. And the best thing that I can suggest is to make sure that they're not just fighting and that's all they do. Because when they just fight, then, it makes sense if they're barbarians or fighters or paladins or even like clerics. They are warriors and they are people who are meant to fight. They live by the sword. However, that's not all there is to it. Why are they fighting? What is their tribe like? What have they learned? Do they have a master? And is that master, is that like their father? Or do they oppose their master in all of their teachings? Why are they this way? And really get your player thinking about their character and their motivation. Because a character who only thinks about what can be killed, they're not thinking about why they need to be killed. And instead of treating the game as a how to do, treat it as a why to do. And that is the best overall suggestion I can give. Another way would be to just, not level them up as quickly, not give them as much experience points. I really don't recommend that because, again, your player will feel like you're picking on them, which, of course, you're not. But if you are, stop that. Another way to do it is to move them into a situation where they don't have any battles. They're stuck out in the middle of the night camping, and then they're stuck there for a week, and then they have to figure out, what's life about, and they come across this other traveler who is all about telling stories, and they have to listen to the lore of the land for a week. So there are plenty of situations that you could put your character in that they would never experience this problem again. There are times that this happened. I still have situations like this where my character isn't as developed as I want them to be. And if you're a player and you feel like you've leveled up too quickly, tell your DM. Let them know that you want to go to a story-based scenario. And if you're a DM and you're not that great with stories, we have the Dwarven Tavern Story Hooks book, which you can totally check out on our website at dwarventavern.net. Or you can look up examples online and see what people are doing for their scenarios. There's tons of resources at your fingertips that can help you along this journey. So I hope that's helpful. If you have any questions whatsoever about this entire topic, it's very complex, it's very in-depth, and I feel like I may have missed a thing or two. If you feel like I've missed any topic, if you feel like I've explained things a little too confusedly, please comment below. I would be happy to explain it even further. And of course, if you have any beginners video ideas or if you have any review material, you can contact us on our website or on our Facebook or on our Twitter. We are pretty much everywhere, and you can find us everywhere. So please check us out everywhere. We are happy to see you and always have a seat warm for you at the tavern. So that about wraps it up. So, I am your host, Lyric, once again with the Dwarven Tavern, wishing for you to want for nothing but adventure, and at first I feared it, then I charged. On behalf of the entire cast and crew of the Dwarven Tavern, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time.